Hi everyone, this is David from davidhobson.net, and in this video we're going to take a look at how we can build a three-dimensional model of a simple table using basic 3D primitive box geometry. I have here a photo of the table we're going to create, and I've made a note of the important dimensions that will allow us to develop an accurate 3D model of this particular table. So let's jump straight in and start the modeling process. We're going to start by creating a 3D box object. So to do that, we come up to the Create tab on the Command panel and make sure the Geometry menu is selected. Then, making sure we are working with the Standard Primitive option, select the Box tool. Then in the Perspective Viewport, we can click to position one corner of the base of our box and drag out and release the left mouse button to create the top side of our box. Now we're going to drag the mouse in a downwards direction to drop the box below the grid plane, so we are effectively applying a negative value to the box height. Now at this stage we're not really worried about the exact size of our box, and the sizes we have at the moment are just random, but it does allow us at the very least to get a box object into our scene. So click to set the height of the box, and now we can set about modifying the size, and to do that we come back over to the Command panel and choose the Modify tab. Now as long as we still have our box object selected, we can come down to the parameters area and make adjustments to the length, width and height values and get the exact required size of our box. So based on the measurements that I've taken for this table, we're going to change the length value to 900, the width value to 1800 and the height value of -20, and we can press the Enter key to accept the new value. Next we can come down to the viewport controls in the bottom right hand corner of our interface and select the Maximize Viewport toggle, and we should now see our box in all four viewports. But because our box has been resized, it's now much larger than our viewport, so we can come up to the Zoom Extents All Selected button and click, and because we still have the object selected, each viewport will adjust to show the full extent of our newly resized box. The next task is to reposition our box so that the center of the top face is located exactly at our scene origin. This step is not essential, but it might help us in the future if you want to import this object into another scene that we might be working on. So to do this, we come up to the main toolbar and choose the Select and Move tool, and then give it a right mouse click. This brings up the Type In dialog box, and we can adjust the absolute world coordinate values for X, Y and Z to a value of 0. As each coordinate value is changed, the selected box objects will be repositioned in our scene. We can now choose to close the Type In box. Next, we're going to continue to develop our table by modelling the lower part of our tabletop. But we already have part of the necessary 3D geometry in place and correctly sized, so we can use this to help develop the next part. And to do this, we're going to clone this first object and then reposition it and then resize it to match the dimensions of the reference table. To clone an object, we make sure we have the original object selected and right click. From the quad menu that appears, we can select the clone command, and from the clone options dialog that pops up, choose in this case the copy object type and then click OK. Now this has created an exact copy of our original object, but at the moment we can't see it because it's in exactly the same position as our original object. It is, however, the object we have currently selected, so we can come back up to the Select and Move tool and right click to see the Type In box. In the offset world Z value, we can type in a value of -20 and press Enter. Our new box will now position itself just below our original box. We can now close the Type In dialog. Making sure the Modify panel is visible, we need to adjust the size of our new box, so we can change the length value to 850, the width value to 1750 and the height to -70. Now at the moment our tabletop is made up of two separate box objects, and it'd be really good if they were combined to form one single object, as this will help us when we come to carry out some future modelling tasks. So to combine our two box objects, we're going to make sure we have our first box object selected, and then we're going to come back up to the Command panel and select the Create tab. From the Geometry menu, we're going to select the drop-down menu, which is currently set to Standard Primitives, and choose the Compound Objects option. From the new Object Type menu, we can select the Pro Boolean command. From the menu that appears below, we are going to select the Union operator from the Parameters rollout, and then activate the Start Picking tool from the Pick Boolean rollout above. Then back over to our perspective view, we're going to select our second box object, and we can straight away see that both our box objects have now been combined into one single object. So the next task is to model and position the table legs, and to do this we're going to create the first leg by coming back up to the Create menu and switching from the Compound Objects menu that we've just used back to the Standard Primitives menu. Then it's down to select the box command, and in the perspective view we're going to create another randomly sized box object. Making sure this new box is still selected, we can come over to the Modify panel, and from the parameters list that appears, adjust the values to give a length of 90, a width of 90, and a height of -750. So now we need to reposition this leg so that it sits in the corner of our tabletop. And rather than try to work out the specific location coordinate, or even try to move the leg object into position and hope that it's going to be close enough, we can use a much more accurate method, and that's by using the Align tool. So making sure we still have the leg object selected, we can come up to the main toolbar and select the Align tool. Next we select our tabletop object. In the Align selection dialog, and for this particular leg, we only need to align for the X and Y positions. The top of our leg is already aligned with the top of our table, and because of this we can make sure the Z position setting is unchecked and only the X and Y position options are allowed for. The next task is to select the appropriate position options for the current object, our table leg, and the target object, our tabletop. In this case we want to align the maximum side of the current object with the maximum side of our target object. With those values set, we can see that the leg is now positioned precisely at the corner of our tabletop, and we can click OK to accept the new alignment. The next task is to create the other 3 legs. Now we have already modelled one leg, and seeing as the remaining 3 legs are identical to the first, there is no need to model the additional legs. We can simply clone the existing leg and reposition the new legs accordingly. So making sure our first leg is still selected, right click and from the quad menu choose the clone command. The copy option is probably still active, so click OK and the newly created leg object is now selected. Going back and selecting the Align tool and then selecting the tabletop object brings up the Align selection dialog, where this time we only need to align for the X position, as the Y and Z positions are both OK. So we can uncheck the Y position option and select the minimum settings for both current and target objects. The new leg is shown to be correctly aligned in our scene, so we can click OK to apply the alignment settings. We still need 2 more legs however, so we can copy what we already have. So select one of the leg objects, then whilst holding down the Control key on your keyboard, select the remaining leg. Then right click and from the quad menu choose the clone tool again. If copy is still selected, click OK, and 2 new legs are created and both are now selected. So it's back up to the Align tool, and in the dialog make sure only the Y position is selected and that the current object and target object options are still set to show minimum. Straight away you'll see that the 2 remaining legs are correctly aligned, so we can click OK to accept the changes. Now we're not quite finished yet, because if we look back at our reference photograph of the table, we can see that the top of the legs are notched into the corner of the tabletop. So to model this, we need to make sure that we have the tabletop object selected and go back to the Compound Objects menu and select the Pro Boolean command again. This time we're going to check that the subtraction operation is chosen, and under the Pick Boolean rollout, make sure the Copy option is active. Now we can activate the Start Picking button, and in the perspective view select each of the 4 legs in turn. And as each leg is selected, we can see how the corner notch is formed in the tabletop. So here we have our completed table, where we have made effective use of reference photographs and dimensions and successfully modelled using the primitive box object and Boolean modelling techniques. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up here on YouTube. This is David Hobson from davidhobson.net. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see more video tutorials on how to work with 3ds Max, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel.